Okay, welcome YouTubers. This is the first podcast that I am video filming while I'm recording a podcast. We're actually going to film episode 31. And so I've turned the video camera on, and this is the first upload for this year. I think I did one video last year on the rules as a tenant just to try out how it would work. But anyway, I wanted to appease. Several of you have approached me asking about watching me record these videos and consuming your knowledge through video instead of just the podcast. So here we go. Let me turn this on. Well, hello there. Welcome to My Life as a Landlord. I'm Dr. Jen, your host, your guru, your educator. This is episode number 31 of My Life as a Landlord. And today is all about landlording perspective, specifically the rules as a landlord, part 2. Most of the listeners out there inherently go to the rules of a landlord, part 1. And so by far, that is the most listened to podcast in my channel, which is kind of cool. But I thought, how can I improve on this whole topic, this rules as a landlord, the landlord perspective? And so I decided I'd put together a rules as a landlord part 2. Now, for those of you who are new to the podcast, first of all, this is the first episode that I am actually also simultaneously recording, which is kind of cool. So if you want to watch me record this, the YouTube channel is, you guessed it, My Life as a Landlord. And this is the first video that I will be simultaneously recording and videoing. It's kind of weird because you're watching me as I'm talking, but that's okay. Go to the channel and check it out. Go to YouTube. Last week I talked about other Salisbury adventures. I spoke about business in a box. And next week, I'll be talking about something on a tenant perspective. And we do have 5 rotating predictable topics. We start with landlord stuff, then tenancy issues, real estate development, then real estate investment, which is all about money, and then other Salisbury adventures. And then for fun, I always try to come up with something that kind of comes out of left field, and I call that a podcast extra. For example, with interest rates rising in North America, both US and Canada, I was approached by several people last week to do a podcast about interest rates, about the rising interest rates and how that's really pinching a lot of landlords. And as a result, it's now going to be pinching a lot of tenants unexpectedly. So I've got a podcast extra in the queue here. The next few days, I'll be recording that, and then my crew will throw it in the mix. So you don't have to wait 5 or 6 or 7 weeks, because I do record these podcasts quite a few at a time. So again, I'm really hoping that we can provide value to you through these podcasts. All right, let's get to it. Rules as a Landlord part 2. Now, let's just review what the rules of the landlord part 1 was. If you haven't listened to this podcast, I highly recommend you do. I'm just going to hit the high points here. Rule number 1. You've got to know your local tenancy code, your local landlord tenant law, residential tenancy act, whatever the name of it is in your state or province. You've got to know the rules of this game that you are playing. Rule number 2, we don't chase people for money. I actually got a lot of questions about that, and I did a separate podcast just on how we don't chase people for money. Rule number 3, we treat people how we want to be treated. That's pretty simple for us. So that was the rules part 1. So let's go to the rules part 2. How could I improve on that? Mike and I really scratched our heads and tried to come up with something really profound. Again, we want to try to provide immediate value to you. Okay, so here we go. Here's the 3 points for rules as a landlord part 2. Number 1, when the tenant takes the keys, the game changes. Subsequently, when you get the keys back, the game changes. The keys are the trick to this. The keys are everything as a landlord. Number 2, the landlord is a lender. I don't see any other way that you can say it. We'll talk more about that. The landlord is a lender. And rule number 3, your rentals are a business, not a charity. That sounds really cold. Unfortunately, numbers don't care about any other things other than logic and speaking in facts. All right, let me expand on all of these. Number one, keys are everything. Let's talk about this. When the tenant takes the keys, the entire game changes. Once you give permission to that tenant to control the unit, sometimes not even the keys, which is even crazier, the game changes. You've given them control of that space. Legally, now you have to request permission to enter. You can't just go barging in. You have to give them proper notice to enter. And to do all of this, you must know the rules. But let's back it up. You've got to screen your tenants properly so that you know who you're giving your keys to. Who is this person? Well, I'm not even going to go into more of that because the keys change everything. And then I'm going to flip it on its head here. Let's talk about when a tenant departs. Let's talk about when a tenant departs and it's really not fun and it's really nasty. And you're talking eviction or eviction for cause, eviction for unpaid rent, whatever stressful event is going on. The goal of an eviction is an empty unit. Goal is to get the keys back, to get that control back. The whole game changes with the keys. I see a ton of people on Facebook, LinkedIn, they're talking about, and all these Facebook groups, they're talking about how they never got unpaid rent back from their tenant, or all these damages or security deposit, or all the different money aspects that they're trying to get back. And that's fine. That's a separate fight, folks. That's a separate fight. The whole trick is you want to get back control of the unit. Until you have control of the unit, you can't do anything. They're not going to pay you. Well, they very likely are not going to pay you anyway, but they're certainly not going to pay you while they're still sitting there. Well, anyway, I may be wrong. If you're a landlord out there and this has happened where you're trying to evict someone and they're trying to pay you, please throw something up on the Facebook group. Or now I've even got the YouTube channel. You can throw it up there as well. But keep in mind, possession is control. Without that, you cannot regroup or recover or restart. You have to have possession of the unit first. You've got to have the keys back. And then you've got to be very careful of who you give the keys to. Yeah. Wow. I don't know how much more I can say about that, but you've got to have control of who you give your keys to. Okay. So that's the first thing. When the tenant takes the keys, the game changes completely. You got to understand what that means. All right. Number two, the landlord is a lender. Okay, let me paint this picture. Before I start explaining about landlording and all that, let's talk about this scenario. Let's talk about you're looking for a new car and you want to finance it. What kinds of things would the bank or the car dealer, whoever is financing it, what kind of things would they need from you if they decide to lend to you, right? They're going to want a pay stub. If you're in the US, they're going to want a W-2. If you're in Canada, they're going to want a T4 or T5. If you're self-employed, they're going to want tax returns. Very likely, they're going to want to know information about your home or your mortgage. Very likely, they're going to want to pull your credit. So compare the value of the car and the payment that that car would result in to the value of the home. And then compare that car payment to a rent payment. Which is more, let's call it invasive, a car or a home? So you've got to be careful here because people seem to have no issue when they go in to buy a car and finance that car. They'll turn on everything and anything to get that car financed. But with a lender, with a landlord requesting credit and all kinds of things, including IDs, pay stubs, proof of income, credit, all these things, it seems that people push back quite a bit more. I'm not sure why that is. I'm actually kind of confounded at that because the landlord is providing the space that is safe, quiet, comfortable to this potential tenant in exchange for the tenant's promise that they're going to pay the rent and they're going to behave according to the lease. So wouldn't the landlord's requirements for lending be as much or more stringent than, say, the car dealer or the bank who's financing the car. Okay, that's the first thing for me for landlord is a lender. Future podcasts, I'm going to do a deep dive into tenant screening. I've mentioned before that there's going to be a membership aspect, a paid area in the website that is deep dives for both newbie landlords and landlords that are in a pickle. So I've got two aspects, landlord, newbie landlords, and pickle landlords. But again, landlord is a lender. I'm going to do much more of that. So the lender exchanges temporary control of a lockable dwelling in exchange for the tenant's promise to pay. I think I said this. That promise is written and it's called a lease. And because landlord is a lender, tenant screening is absolutely vital. And that's why I'm going to do a super deep dive on tenant screening. Future coming. Okay, let's go to the next one. Rule number 3, rentals are a business, not a charity. Okay, this sounds heartless. And I'm going to tell you that Mike and I have given chances to a lot of people, and we've been burned. And we've also given chances to people who have pulled themselves out and proved us right in empowering them. But as a landlord, and those of you who are pickle landlords and you're already in rentals and you understand, you're going to get a lot of stories of why people need housing. You're going to get a lot of sob stories. You're going to get a this or that, I have to be out in 2 days kind of a thing. Well, I get it. I absolutely get it. I mean, I've got rentals available right now, and it's heartbreaking, the stories that I hear. But I've also got to make sure that whoever I rent to can qualify to pay the rent, and that they are there's not too many people or beings in that unit, and so they still have to qualify. It has to be a mutual thing. And then, oh, by the way, like for example, I just got a tenancy application from someone who has health problems and they cannot be around anyone that's smoking at all. Well, the vacancy they have applied for includes a deck that has nothing but smokers around them. Is that going to work? I don't know. I'm not sure. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see. That's the answer. But I suspect that's not going to be a good fit. But all I know is that rentals are business. And that business does not start with the tenant telling a story. It starts with the landlord saying, here is my requirements for rentals. This is what I require. This is what I need. And then sticking to it. And when you start making accommodations, you're going to find out that the accommodations will backfire. Almost definitely they will backfire. Something will happen and something won't get paid, or you said I could, or hey, I'm your friend, I'm your family member. It is a little bit painful here, but I always warn friends and family, who are listening, you'll laugh. When I rent to friends and family, I say very specifically, when you are entering my business as a tenant, you get 0 preferential treatment, 0. And of course, that's the military officer in me coming out. I seek facts. I seek people to qualify as tenants, and then we try to make sure that the space that they're qualifying for fits for them. So do we require a partial application for a showing? Yes. Do I require IDs and pay stubs and all that stuff to get the showing? No, I don't. But I have to have at least a peek at who these people are so that I'm not wasting my time. When I first started growing up as a landlord in BC, there was a lot of showings and there were deal breakers at the showings. But, oh, I didn't realize it only had 2 bedrooms, or, oh, I didn't realize there was only this, or there was no bathtub, or, okay, lots of lessons learned here. And we don't schedule showings without at least some kind of preliminary application submitted. They can tell their story. They can tell us their need. They can tell us everything through that application. But trying to get me on the phone or cornering me at the grocery store and telling me the story, that ain't the way to get it. Not into my business anyway. Okay. Here's where we're at. Summary of the 3 points. Key possession. The keys. Possession of the unit. The keys to the unit is everything. The game changes when you hand the keys to the tenant. The game changes back when you get the keys back from the tenant. Possession is everything. Number two, the landlord is a lender. You've got to treat it that way. Many people are not being serious about this lending aspect to these tenants. You've got to make sure that you are keen, because as a landlord, all my landlords out there, you are lenders. And then three, your business is not a charity. It is a business. You've got to run it properly. Okay, so your call to action. Here we go. Talked a lot about keys. Guess what? Guess what the call to action is? How organized are your keys? Are they labeled and easy to find? Are they dumped in a drawer, scattered, not labeled? No idea what key goes to what. So here's your call to action, my landlords out there. Organize your keys. If you don't organize your keys, you're going to be paying for a lot of locksmith time, or you're going to be paying your handyman to either rekey or change deadbolts or whatever, especially if you have multiple units or multiple properties or both, like I have. And if we don't have keys under control, things get really hairy really quickly. And key control is really ideal. You absolutely, it's adamant. You've got to do it. Okay, let me know your comments or your questions on our Facebook group for My Life as a Landlord. Now I've got a YouTube channel for My Life as a Landlord. Remember, I create my podcasts out of questions and comments that I can map out and provide immediate value for you. Join me. Next week's topic is a tenant perspective. This is episode number 32 coming up. Help my landlord forgot about me. Oh my, that sounds intriguing. I will see you next Saturday. See you there. Okay, where's my Zoom? Hey, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Hope you learned something. We'll see you on episode number 32.